Everyone sees us as the perfect family who survived a storm together. But no one knows what actually happened in that basement, or how it changed the way I look at my parents forever. Welcome to Reddit Toxic Family Telltales channel. New episode every day. How did I ever get my parents to let me eat as much candy as I wanted? Well, I didn't. My brother did. And in the end, his candy stash is the reason our whole family survived. See, we weren't just the healthy family. We were the extreme healthy family. If a food had more than 5 ingredients, banned. No excuses. No slip-ups. Nothing. I'll never forget the day Mom found a ketchup packet in my brother's pocket. You'd think she had caught him smuggling something illegal. She held it like it was toxic waste, her face twisted in disgust. After that, our world shrank. No school trips, no playdates, because our parents couldn't risk what we might eat there. Every lunch was the same, matching little containers of raw veggies and Mom's homemade hummus. Meanwhile, the other kids unpacked pizza slices and Oreos. Here come the rabbits. They chant. My brother just stared at his carrot sticks, his jaw so tight I thought his teeth might crack. He was 12. I was 10. Old enough to know we were the weird kids. I had already given up, honestly, just accepted that this was my life until I hit 18. But for him? It broke something inside. He'd tell me how his friends traded Halloween candy he never even got to collect, how they passed around bags of chips during recess while he sat there with celery. He tried everything to change our parents' minds. He made an actual PowerPoint about Olympic athletes who ate McDonald's and still won gold medals. He even printed out ingredient lists comparing Mom's $20 health bars to cheap granola bars from the store. Same number of ingredients, sometimes more. Mom just sniffed and said, "The quality's different." He begged for just one normal snack a week. His voice cracked when he said it. Dad didn't even blink. That's how addiction starts. When you're 18, you can poison your body all you want. 18. To a 12-year-old, that was basically never. So that's when my brother adapted. He became a pro at what we called fountain diving. He'd kneel by the edge of a park fountain, pretend to tie his shoe, and bam, handfuls of wet coins before anyone noticed. He knew which parks filled up fastest, what times people made wishes, even which gas station clerks wouldn't question a kid paying with dripping quarters. He made me swear never to tell. And in exchange, he shared his loot with me. Doritos, Kit Kats, jerky. Food that tasted like freedom. We'd sit cross-legged on the bathroom floor, splitting a Snickers bar into tiny bites so it would last longer, our secret rebellion hidden behind locked doors. And our parents? They bragged. Our kids never even ask for junk food anymore. Mom would beam, completely clueless. But then came that Tuesday in May. We were at dinner, steamed broccoli, quinoa, the usual, when Dad's phone buzzed. Emergency alert. Tornado warning. Take shelter immediately. The sky outside was this sick, greenish yellow like a giant bruise. Then the sirens started wailing. That horrible up and down cry that makes your stomach drop. Basement. Now, Dad barked. Mom darted for the fridge, arms loaded with glass containers of chopped vegetables and her precious bottles of kombucha. We might be down there for hours, she insisted. The thunder hit so loud the house rattled. The basement went black as we huddled in the corner. The storm howled above us like a freight train ripping through our living room. Mom tried to sound calm. Good thing I grabbed vegetables. We've got plenty of fresh food. But when my brother's eyes met mine in the dark, we both knew the truth. Fresh food doesn't last long in a sweltering basement. Hours crawled by. The air turned suffocating. Mom's vegetables were slimy already, her yogurt a warm, sour soup. My stomach twisted in hunger. That's when I heard the soft sound of a zipper. My brother slowly unzipped his backpack. Even in the dim light, I saw Mom's expression change. Shock. Horror. And then something else. Inside was everything forbidden. Candy bars, crackers, jerky, canned ravioli, all the contraband he'd been hoarding. Her voice shook. "Where did you get this?" "I've been saving it," he whispered. "For emergencies." We were trapped down there for 20 hours. And for 20 hours, my family, my raw veggie kombucha-worshipping parents, survived on my brother's stash of toxic junk food. Dad actually teared up biting into a Snickers. "I forgot peanut butter could taste this good," he murmured. Mom ate jerky in silence, tears streaming down her face. When rescue crews finally reached us, they told us we were lucky. Families nearby had already run out of food. One firefighter even mentioned that an all-organic family just a few streets away had to be evacuated after 10 hours. Nothing they had was shelf-stable, he said. And for the first time in my life, I watched my mom hug my brother like she'd never let go. Her shoulders shook with sobs. Because the truth was undeniable. His forbidden candy had saved us all. That's when Mom finally broke. Her whole body was trembling, her breath ragged like she couldn't hold it together anymore. Her hands pressed against her stomach as if she might be sick right there in front of us. And then, like a dam giving way, words just poured out. She told us the real reason sugar was banned. 8 years ago, before I was old enough to remember, she'd been in a terrible car accident. The doctors gave her painkillers, OxyContin at first, then stronger ones when those stopped working. And before she even realized what was happening, she couldn't get through a day without them. As she spoke, her fingers kept twitching against her arms, rubbing up and down like she was trying to scrub the memories off her skin. Her voice shook when she admitted that sugar, something as small as sugar, made the old cravings roar back so violently it terrified her. Dad stepped in then, his hand landing heavy on her shoulder. His voice cracked as he filled in the rest of the story. He'd found her on the bathroom floor when my brother was 4 and I was just 2. Unconscious. barely breathing. He called 911, convinced she was already gone. The paramedics managed to bring her back. That night, he said, changed everything. He enforced every food rule, every restriction to keep her safe. To keep all of us together. I looked at my brother just in time to see the change flash across his face, confusion, realization, and then rage. Pure, sharp rage. He shot up from his chair so fast it toppled against the basement wall with a bang. So we paid for your recovery with our entire childhood? His voice was like a whip crack, every word fueled by years of swallowed resentment. His hands shook, his pale face blotched red across the cheeks. I couldn't even move. My mind was trying to stitch everything together, Mom's overdose, the storm above us, the years of humiliation at school. And my stomach twisted in knots. Part of me felt thankful she was alive, thankful we'd even survived the tornado. But another part, this bitter, burning part, couldn't stop screaming inside about every birthday party we missed, every Halloween we never had, every normal moment that was stolen because of her addiction. And then came the guilt. Because how could I be angry at her when she was fighting something so heavy, so life-threatening? By the time the rescue crews pulled us out that night, our roof half gone, we were brought to the community shelter. And that's when it hit us, tables piled high with donated food. Pop-Tarts, instant ramen, canned soups, sugary cereal in bright boxes. Everything Mom had banned for years. Her hands shook when she saw it all. Little tremors that grew worse each time she watched another family scoop up bags of chips and boxes of cookies without hesitation. My brother walked straight up to the cereal table, eyes locked on Mom the whole way. He picked up 3 boxes like they were trophies, Fruit Loops, Lucky Charms, Cocoa Puffs. Clutched them to his chest, daring her to stop him. I grabbed a sandwich from the cooler, my first real sandwich in years. Not lettuce wrapped around sprouts, but actual bread with deli meat. It felt almost rebellious to bite into it. Mom opened her mouth, probably to scold us, but Dad's hand landed on her arm again, firm this time. And she went quiet. We stood there in this thick, frozen silence while volunteers smiled kindly at us, totally unaware they were watching the biggest standoff in our family's history. Later, in the parking lot, Dad cleared his throat and muttered, "Temporary exceptions, until things get back to normal." But my brother and I exchanged a look. We both knew what temporary meant. It meant until Mom decided her cravings were under control. Until she was ready to take it all away again. That night, in our half-destroyed living room, my brother finally cracked. He appended his backpack onto the table. Wet quarters clattered and rolled everywhere, scattering like silver raindrops. At least $30 in slimy change. "I've been stealing from fountains for 2 years, he said, staring directly at Mom. "That's how desperate you made me." Then he offered a deal. He'd stop the fountain diving if we could just have normal snacks sometimes. Just sometimes. Like other kids. Mom's face went ghost white. Her hand covered her mouth like she might vomit. And then she shook her head, already launching into therapy talk. Trauma. Addiction. Disease. Relapse risk. She said sugar couldn't cross our threshold. That her sobriety had to come first for all of us. 3 days later, once the inspectors cleared us to return home, Mom went straight to my brother's room. I followed, hovering in the hallway, heart pounding. She tore through his hiding spots like she'd done it before, behind his dresser, inside his old soccer trophy, the gap in his mattress. She pulled out every last candy bar, every bag of chips, every secret treasure bought with wet quarters. Dumped it all into a garbage bag, her face twisted like she was handling poison. My brother stood in the doorway, his face completely blank. No shouting this time. No pleading. Just a fist clenched so hard his knuckles went white. She carried the bag out like toxic waste. And he stayed there, frozen in the doorway, staring into the empty space where his rebellion had lived. 2 years of fountain diving. 2 years of stolen wishes. All for nothing. And I couldn't help but wonder, how many gas station clerks had looked at those dripping coins in his hands and thought nothing of it? How many people had seen a little boy paying with soaked quarters and just let it slide? Because that was the secret life my brother had been living, just to taste a bag of chips. That night, when the house finally went still and everyone else was asleep, I slipped out of bed. My heart was pounding in my throat as I crept down the stairs, every creak of the wood sounding like a gunshot in the silence. Outside, the trash can sat against the side of the house, the big black bag still sitting right on top. I dug my hands into it, feeling around through crumpled wrappers and smashed snacks until my fingers brushed something solid. A Snickers bar, half crushed but still intact. My hands shook as I shoved it into the pocket of my pajamas and hurried back upstairs, convinced every shadow in the hallway was my dad catching me. In my room, I wrapped that candy bar in an old sock and hid it deep behind my winter clothes in the back of my drawer. Just knowing it was there gave me this strange sense of power, like I had chosen a side in the quiet war tearing our family apart. School started the next week, and somehow lunch felt even worse than before. The tornado was all anyone wanted to whisper about. The kids who used to call us rabbits now added this bizarre twist of respect, mocking us but also curious. "So do you get to eat normal food now?" One kid asked, eyeing my carrot sticks. I didn't answer. Just chewed in silence, heat burning up my neck. 3 days into school, the counselor caught me slipping crackers into my pockets at lunch. She led me to her office plastered with cheesy motivational posters and asked how things were at home. Her voice was soft, careful. I was so tired of secrets, of hiding, that I almost spilled everything right there. But instead, I just shrugged. "We're fine." She gave me a pamphlet about family counseling, about balance, about letting kids still be kids while keeping them safe. And for the first time in a long time, I felt this tiny flicker of hope. Maybe someone out there could fix us. That night, I showed Dad the pamphlet. His jaw tightened, his eyes hard. We don't need strangers telling us how to raise our kids, he muttered. But underneath the anger was something else, fear. The weekend came and at the gas station my brother made his move. Mom stayed in the car while Dad pumped gas. My brother walked straight into the store, grabbed a bag of Doritos and paid for it in plain sight, right where Mom could see him through the window. He ripped the bag open and ate chip after chip, his face blank, his eyes fixed straight ahead. Mom shattered. She started shaking, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Dad rubbed her back, whispering, "It's okay, it's okay." But my brother didn't flinch. He didn't even glance at her. He just kept eating. That night, Mom asked us to go with her to a recovery meeting. My brother refused at first, but I pushed. We needed to understand. So we sat in folding chairs in a church basement, listening to strangers spill their darkest truths. A woman sobbing about how her kid's Halloween candy made her crave alcohol. A man admitting his family had to lock up vanilla extract. Another woman confessing she couldn't even walk past the wine aisle without her hands trembling. Mom nodded through it all, tears streaking down her face. In the parking lot afterward, my brother turned on her. "I'm 12. I'm not responsible for your recovery." His voice was sharp, final. Mom broke into fresh sobs, but he didn't waver. Later, Dad sat at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. He looked small. Smaller than I'd ever seen him. His words tumbled out, shaking, how the food rules weren't just for Mom, they were for him too. How he panicked every time sugar entered the house, imagining it would send her spiraling. How he thought if he controlled every crumb we ate, he could stop the whole world from collapsing again. He admitted he was drowning, trying to look perfect, terrified the neighbors would see how broken we were. My brother's voice cut through the silence. "Do you even care that we're miserable?" Dad's tears came then, slow and unsteady. "Of course I care. I just didn't know how to keep us safe any other way." The next morning, Mom came downstairs clutching a notebook. She'd spent the night writing, lists of her fears, every one of them tied to us eating sugar. She confessed she had convinced herself that if she controlled our diet, she could control her addiction. But she realized now she couldn't keep dumping the weight of her recovery onto our shoulders. She said she didn't know how to stop, but she wanted to try. My brother pulled out his phone and showed her a Reddit thread, stories from kids of addicts. Stories about guilt, about hiding, about feeling invisible. Mom's face grew paler with every sentence she read, her hands trembling. She kept whispering, "I never wanted you to feel this way." Then Monday morning came. We were eating breakfast when the phone rang. Mom answered in her usual cheerful voice, but it dropped flat when she heard who it was, Janice from her support group. Security at the park had been reporting a kid diving into fountains for months. They'd finally caught him on camera. They had a clear photo. Mom's hand shook so violently she nearly dropped the phone. Dad grabbed it, his face draining of color as he listened. My brother and I sat frozen, the air heavy with a truth too obvious to deny. When their eyes turned to my brother, it wasn't anger I saw. It was worse. It was fear. Like they were suddenly looking at a stranger. That night after dinner, silence pressed against the walls of our house. Then Dad went to my brother's room and started searching. We all watched as he pulled the backpack out from under the bed. He unzipped it slowly, like he was about to trigger an explosion. Inside maps. Hand-drawn, color-coded maps of every fountain in town. Notes about the best times to collect coins, which parks filled up fastest, which gas stations wouldn't ask questions. There were lists of vending machines, what snacks gave the most value, even tally sheets of every penny collected and spent. Pages and pages of desperate strategy. Mom traced her finger along one of the routes he'd drawn. Dad stood there speechless, holding months of evidence in his hands. And my brother finally broke. He collapsed into sobs, harder than I'd ever heard him cry. His body shook as he choked out the words. "I was just so hungry. I was so tired of being the weird kid. I wanted to eat lunch without people staring. I just wanted to be normal." And for the first time, even Dad cried. His strong, unshakable voice cracked apart. Because in that moment, none of us could deny the truth anymore. My brother hadn't just been sneaking snacks. He'd been surviving. Later that week, we found ourselves sitting in Janice's office for our first official family meeting. The room was soft and calm, her voice even softer, like she knew we were all seconds from breaking apart again. She laid out this idea of a trial system for us. Each of us kids would get a small snack allowance every week. Clear boundaries. Clear storage spots so Mom wouldn't have to see anything that might trigger her. Everyone looked wrung out from days of crying and yelling, but willing. Even Mom, though she couldn't stop twisting her hands together and tearing at her cuticles until they were raw. Janice wrote all the new rules up on a giant whiteboard, and Mom actually pulled out her phone and snapped a picture, like she needed proof that this was real, that she hadn't imagined it. Our first grocery trip under the new rules felt like walking barefoot across broken glass. Mom's grip on the cart was so tight her knuckles went bone white while my brother and I edged down the snack aisle, picking out granola bars and pretzels like we were defusing bombs. Shoppers kept staring when Mom started doing loud breathing exercises in the middle of the cereal aisle, whispering numbers as she counted to 10, again and again. My brother reached for a box of crackers and Mom physically flinched, like he'd drawn a knife on her. But she didn't stop him. Just kept breathing. At checkout, she nearly bolted, shaking so violently she could barely hold her wallet. Then she called her sponsor, Anna Rhodes, right there at the counter, put her on speaker, and repeated affirmations while Anna's voice coached her through the panic. "I can do this. I can do this." Over and over while the cashier scanned items and other customers tried to look anywhere but at us. The first day I was allowed to buy pizza at school was unreal. Like committing a crime in broad daylight. My hands shook as I passed over my lunch money and carried a greasy slice of pepperoni to my table. My friends didn't even blink, they acted like it was nothing. But to me, it was guilt and cheese tangled together in every bite. That night we made it official. Snacks would live in a plastic bin in the garage, while the kitchen remained Mom's safe zone. Two worlds under one roof. The garage became this neutral territory where normal food could exist in exile. But 2 days later I caught my brother sneaking granola bars into his room. Breaking the new trust already. When I called him out he looked ashamed, but he whispered that he couldn't help it. He kept waiting for it all to disappear, for Mom to yank it away again. He carried the bars back out to the garage, his head low, and we stood there staring at the bin together. For years we'd been co-conspirators, rebels. Now we were enforcers of rules that felt foreign and cold. And for the first time it felt lonely between us. Then the PTA president called. Asked Mom to speak at their emergency preparedness meeting, since word had spread about how we'd survived the tornado. Mom's face drained of color. She muttered something about a work conflict, but I knew she couldn't stand in front of those parents and admit her kids survived on candy and jerky when she'd spent years preaching the dangers of processed food. She locked herself in her room instead, skipping dinner. 2 nights later, Dad came home carrying a grocery bag. He pulled out a half-gallon of mint chocolate chip ice cream and set it on the counter like it was no big deal. He grabbed spoons, started scooping bowls. For one breathless second I thought maybe this was progress. But Mom froze in the doorway. Her whole body trembled, then she turned and bolted. The lock clicked, muffled sobs seeping out of their bedroom. Dad just stood there, holding the ice cream scoop, looking utterly lost. My brother shoved his bowl away, untouched, and stormed out. The carton sat melting on the counter as Dad begged through the door, "Please, just come out." She never did. My brother didn't come home until after 10. When Dad asked where he'd been, he just shrugged and disappeared into his room. The next afternoon, I found him sitting at the edge of the downtown fountain. Only it was empty. Drained after the tornado, nothing left but a dry, cracked basin. He sat there staring into the hollow concrete like it was mocking him. I sat beside him in silence until he finally stood and checked 3 more fountains. Every one of them empty. At the last one he snapped. Kicked the edge so hard the sound of his toe smacking concrete echoed, sharp and painful. He limped the whole way to the gas station. And that's where it happened. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of wet coins, leftovers from before the storm, and placed them on the counter for a bag of jerky. The clerk just shook his head and pointed to a new sign taped to the register. "We cannot accept damaged or waterlogged coins." My brother's shoulders sagged, his whole body deflating. He stood there a moment too long before stepping outside to the pay phone. When I answered, his voice was small. "Broken. Can you come get me?" I told Mom and Dad I had to return a library book and grabbed the car keys before they could ask questions. My stomach churned the whole drive. I'd never lied like that before. He slid into the passenger seat without a word, smelling faintly of dust and disappointment. We drove home in silence, the weight of it pressing down on both of us. And all I could think was, lying had just become another secret we'd have to keep. Another brick on the pile already crushing us. The next morning at breakfast, Dad's face darkened as he scrolled through his phone. He turned the screen toward us and my stomach dropped. My location history. The gas station on 5th Street. The secret ride I thought I'd gotten away with. Mom's fork clattered onto her plate, and the look they gave us, it wasn't anger. It wasn't yelling. It was worse. Quiet betrayal. That heavy, suffocating kind that makes your chest ache. They didn't punish us. They called Janice. That afternoon we sat in her office while she drew 2 columns on the whiteboard, can control and cannot control. One by one we filled them in. Mom's hand trembled as she wrote my recovery under can control, then froze for what felt like forever before finally writing my kids' food choices under cannot. My brother scrawled what I eat under can control but left the other side blank. Dad hesitated, then wrote trying to help under can control and making it worse under cannot. Mom burst into tears. When it was my turn I wrote, telling the truth under can control, even though I just lied the day before. The words felt like they were burning through me. That Friday my brother snapped. At lunch he devoured 3 slices of pizza and 2 ice cream sandwiches. By 5th period he threw up all over his desk. The nurse called Mom, dragging her out of an important meeting. She found him in the office, pale and miserable. The drive home was silent except for his groans and I braced myself for the lecture. But Mom didn't scold. She just handed him tissues, drove carefully, and brought him water and crackers when they got home. "No, I told you so. Just care." That weekend, Dad knocked on his door. "Want to learn how to make something you actually like?" They spent 3 hours in the kitchen making turkey burgers. My brother picked every seasoning, every topping. And when he took the first bite of the burger he'd made himself, he actually smiled. A real smile. That night, I did something I'd been scared to do. I walked into the kitchen, pulled out the Milky Way I'd hidden since the tornado and held it up. Mom froze mid-dish, Dad set down the plate he was drying. "Should I put it in the garage bin?" I asked. They shared a look. Then Mom just nodded. No lecture. No disappointment. Just agreement. The next morning, we sat at the table with a notebook. Dad wrote house food rules at the top in his neat handwriting. Mom suggested an 80-20 plan, mostly healthy meals but room for normal snacks. My brother asked for a weekly snack budget and Dad wrote it down. We agreed the garage bin would stay stocked for emergencies. Mom even taped her meeting schedule to the fridge so we'd know when she needed extra support. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Later that week, I caught my brother smoothing out one of his old fountain maps on his desk. The paper was worn and stained, covered in notes about which parks and times were best. He stared at it for a long time, then folded it carefully and tucked it back in his drawer. We might need it someday, he muttered when he saw me watching. 3 weeks later, Mom came home pale and shaky. She locked herself in the bedroom, whispering into the phone with Anna for nearly an hour. Dad told us afterward, someone had brought donuts to her office party. She'd stayed sober, but it shook her hard. 2 months after the tornado, I sat in my room doing homework and realized how different things felt. We weren't sneaking food anymore, but freedom still carried tension. Every snack, every meal was laced with unspoken fear. Mom would watch us eat, eyes far away. Dad still read labels like they were secret codes. My brother and I had stopped hiding candy, but we didn't ask for much either. It wasn't worth the look in their eyes. But school was easier. My brother carried granola bars and fruit snacks in his backpack, out in the open. No hiding. Kids stopped calling us rabbits. We weren't normal, but we weren't the weirdos anymore either. Mom joined a special support group on Wednesday nights for parents in recovery. She'd come home with worksheets, boundaries, triggers, healthy family dynamics. One night she showed us one about age-appropriate choices, and for once she actually tried to follow it. She stopped rifling through our backpacks. Let us pick from the approved list without asking permission first. Dad started therapy on Thursdays. He called it anxiety management, but I knew it was about Mom. About the way his whole body tensed every time ice cream or candy entered the house. His therapist gave him trust exercises. I saw him practicing, breathing deep when Mom got quiet at dinner or when we asked for seconds on dessert. Sometimes he slipped, but he was trying. Then the test came. My brother got invited to a birthday party at the pizza place downtown. And for the first time they let him go. Not completely alone, other parents would be there, but without Mom and Dad hovering. He texted them pictures, a slice of pizza, a plate with cake. Proof. Mom clutched her phone the whole 3 hours, but she didn't call once. Dad found excuses to drive past the pizza place twice, but he didn't go in. When my brother came home, they didn't grill him. Didn't lecture. They just asked softly, "Did you have fun?" And for the first time in years it felt like maybe, just maybe, our family had found a crack of light through all that darkness. At school I started sitting with Teresa. Funny thing was, I already knew her mom's name, Anna. The same Anna my mom kept mentioning in her recovery stories. Turns out, Anna was Teresa's mom. She was my mom's sponsor. Teresa got it in a way no one else did. At lunch she told me about her own family's weird rules when her mom first got sober, how they had to lock away anything with alcohol in it, even vanilla extract. She said, "It gets easier, but it never gets completely normal." And somehow that one line felt like the most honest thing anyone had told me in months. Our school counselor introduced something new, practice meals. The idea was that we'd face food together, slowly, like training wheels. The first time, Mom set a fun-sized Snickers bar on the table. She just stared at it for 20 minutes, her hands trembling, lips moving with silent breaths Anna had taught her. My brother unwrapped it like he was defusing a bomb. He took a tiny bite. I followed. And Mom stayed in her chair. Her eyes watered, but she didn't run. That was a win. Every week, we added something harder. Doritos. Chocolate donuts from the gas station. Mom would grip the edge of the table until her knuckles turned bone white, sometimes pacing the kitchen mid-meal, whispering her breathing counts. But she always came back. Always sat down again. Something shifted. My brother started doing homework at the kitchen table again. His grades climbed from C's and D's to A's and B's. His teacher even called home to praise him. Mom just said, "We're working through some family stuff." She didn't mention the maps of fountains and vending machines. She didn't say how her son used to trade dripping quarters for jerky behind the gym. We created a system at home, a red magnet on the fridge. If Mom was having a hard day, the magnet went up. That meant no eating snacks in front of her. We'd retreat quietly with chips or fruit snacks in our rooms, no fights, no sneaking. Some weeks the magnet barely left its spot. Other times we had stretches where we could eat on the couch, watching TV, and Mom would sip her coffee from the other room. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. 6 months after the tornado, the neighborhood threw a potluck. Everyone was celebrating rebuilding their homes. Mom brought a vegetable tray, classic Mom move. But when Mrs. Peterson handed us plates of mac and cheese and chocolate cake, Mom didn't snatch them away. She just breathed. Dad ate 4 brownies and instead of lecturing him, she squeezed his hand. Other parents kept saying how calm she seemed, how strong. None of them knew how much breathing it took. One afternoon, my brother and I sat on the porch, passing a bag of chips back and forth in plain sight. Mom watched through the kitchen window, gripping her coffee cup with both hands. But she didn't come outside. Didn't stop us. My brother offered me the last chip and I took it. For the first time in years, it felt like we were just normal kids. That night, Dad floated an idea at dinner, a family vacation. Somewhere with restaurants and ice cream shops. Mom didn't say yes. But she didn't shut it down either. She didn't list toxic ingredients. She just kept eating her grilled chicken. Later, I caught Dad on hotel websites. And Mom didn't tell him to close the laptop. Sometimes I still check my sock drawer. It's always empty now, but I think about that hidden Milky Way. About how I had to choose between betraying my brother or keeping his secret. The empty drawer is a reminder of how far we've come, and how much we're still carrying. My brother doesn't stash candy in air vents anymore. But every now and then I spot a bag of chips in his backpack, insurance, just in case. Mom still has days where she can't look at a cookie without shaking. I still lie sometimes, saying I'm at the library when I'm really getting ice cream with Teresa. Dad sneaks candy bars in his car and thinks no one notices, but we all do. The difference now? We're not at war anymore. We're not living off secrets and fountain coins. We eat dinner together every night. Sometimes it's kale and quinoa, sometimes it's pasta with garlic bread. Nobody storms out. Nobody locks themselves in their room. Mom goes to her meetings twice a week. We don't ask what she talks about, but she comes back calmer. Dad breathes through his fears instead of turning them into rules. My brother laughs again, actually laughs, and does his homework without maps scattered around him. No, it's not perfect. It may never be perfect. But at least now we're trying. Together. And after everything, the lies, the secrets, the storm, I think that's enough. Thanks for watching. Today's train wreck is over, but tomorrow's ride is already on track. Subscribe so you don't miss it.